Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Ozzy Albert. I'm the supervisor of the town of Fishkill. I'm here with Councilman Carmine Estevan, Deputy Supervisor Harold Brilliant, and William Beale from Dutchess County who will be hosting this event. I'm happy to see you all here. This is going to be a good event. We're going to teach you some good stuff for the future in case of emergencies. And Mr. Beale, I'll hand it off to you right now.
Sure. I'm going to try to take a picture. Hang on.
You want to take a picture? Okay, let me act like I'm talking. So it's a pretty nice day today. It's a great turnout. Okay. Yankees, Mets too, right? Okay. All right.
Okay. So this is not usual, all right, to have this many people show up, which is a good thing. I mean, obviously the Fishkill delivery email service is working well. Everyone's getting. How many people have been to this program before? Okay. All right. We've done it here twice before. Back in the days before COVID. Does anyone remember those days, what it was like? It was almost like this, actually. I mean, good job, supervisor, spacing all the chairs out so everybody had room. That didn't work. If you feel more comfortable wearing a mask, that is fine. We have no objection to that. If you feel more comfortable not wearing a mask, that is fine, too. So if you do have any symptoms, please don't be in here. That will defeat the entire purpose. I got to give a shout out to Hal Brilliant, or I call him Brilliant Hal, who is the deputy town supervisor here in the town of Fishkill. Hal has been requesting this program probably for the last 3 years, since before COVID. And I kept telling Hal, I said, well, we have to wait until COVID's over, right? Thinking that COVID would actually end at some point, right? Eventually, we had to just start this program up again, right? Obviously, we want to be safe. We want to make sure everybody's healthy. But at the same time, we have to live our lives and continue to be prepared. So that's why we're here. I'm William Beale. I have been doing this presentation for, I guess, since 2015, 2016 when we started it. It has evolved. And I will tell you that this particular program started out not really talking about public health emergencies, right? We were talking about natural disasters. We were talking about man-made disasters. But we really weren't talking about public health pandemics. Why were we not talking about public health pandemics pre-2020? Because nobody expected this type of thing to happen, right? We have all lived a long 2.5+ years. Am I right? We've had enough of it. We want to move on. We want to be prepared, but at the same time, we want to be safe. So here this evening, joining me from the Medical Reserve Corps, you saw them as you came in. Susan Gilberti is here, who is one of our MRC volunteers. Anna Shah is here. I think she's out at the table. There she is, Anna Shah from the MRC. We also have Anthony Sang here from the MRC. Thank you for being here. Anthony is also an officer with Beacon Volunteer Ambulance, which serves the town of Fishkill, so thank you, Anthony, for your service with BVAC. And also, and this is a first, we actually have one of our full-time public health professionals here this evening. I'm getting very nervous by her being in the room. Allie is an epidemiologist from our Department of Behavioral and Community Health, and does anyone know what epidemiology is? Well, nobody knew what epidemiology was until March of 2020, right? These are the detectives that work in public health that basically track these types of diseases and really lead the way to help us respond to them as effectively as we can based on the information we know. Is that fair to say, Allie? Close enough. Yeah. Close. She does a lot of work. Give her a round of applause. So, again, my name is William Beale. Tonight, I am the director of the Dutchess County Department, Dutchess County Emergency Management within the Department of Emergency Response. In my other life, I'm also an elected councilman in the town of Wappinger. I'm the deputy town supervisor just up the way. Now, the town of Wappinger famously seceded from the town of Fishkill in 1875. We're not sure what exactly happened, but we are two separate towns now. Hal was there, actually, when it happened, so he won't tell me what happened, but So we are two separate towns that work together on a lot of things. And for folks that are from the town of Fishkill, thank you for being here. How many folks are not from the town of Fishkill that are here in the crowd here tonight? Look at this, Ozzy. Look at this. Okay, so I'm taking a guess. Is there anybody here from another county? Anybody here from another county? Because I did speak to a county legislator in Putnam County who asked permission to promote this, and I said, of course, why not, right? Oh, we have an Orange County representative too. Oh, wow, this is incredible. I actually, the first 6 years of my life were in the town of Phillipstown on Beale Road, just south of the town of Phillipstown. That's my dad's neighborhood that he developed. So here I am in Dutchess County now. So this particular presentation has been a road show for a number of years. Obviously, we took a 2.5-year hiatus because we couldn't really bring people together in groups. We talked about doing it virtually, but I think everybody had enough fun virtual. We didn't want to do it virtually. I like being out in the crowd, talking to people. It's easier to hand people backpacks when you're in person. So that's why we want to continue to do this in person. This program, this outreach training, has been going on for about I'd say 2016 it got officially kicked off, and it kicked off at Dutchess Community College as the largest citizens preparedness training between New York City and Albany. That night we trained about 250 individuals that night, and we continued to move on from there to different places around and through Dutchess County. So as I mentioned, town of Fishkill, this is the third time in the town of Fishkill actually. Certainly never had a crowd like this, I will tell you that. But we've been to Amenia, we've been to the city of Beacon, we plan to go back to the city of Beacon soon. I was speaking to a resident who wants us back in the city, we'll make that happen. Town of Beekman, town of Dover, we've been to the Wingdale Library, we've been to the Dover Senior Center. Town of East Fishkill, we've been there. Town of Hyde Park, we've been there 3 times. We've been all the way up to the village of Millerton. Anybody ever been to Millerton? Make sure you have a full tank of gas before you head up there. We're right on the corner of Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New York, delivering the training up there at the town of Northeast Millerton Library. Town of Pauling, we've been there. Pine Plains, that's another road trip. Pleasant Valley, the city and town of Poughkeepsie, we've been there collectively about 4 times. Town of Red Hook, Village of Rhinebeck. Town of Stamford 3 times. Every time we go to Stamford, it snows. I don't know why that is, but it just does. I don't know. Town of Unionville, town of Wapacher, Village of Wapachers Falls, Dutchess Community College twice, and then here we are in the town of Fishkill this evening. So the objective here tonight is to give you some information that you can use to better prepare yourself. And when you leave here this evening, I want you to walk outside and feel that you had a productive experience here. This is information that we all should know, and this is information that can make us more safe. So let's get into it. Preparedness. What is preparedness? Well, this is the FEMA definition, a continuous cycle of planning, organizing, training, equipping, exercising, evaluating, and taking corrective action in an effort to ensure effective coordination during incident response, right? So we want to be prepared, right? That's the Boy Scout model, be prepared. That's what we want to make sure. What we have found through research is more prepared residents and visitors in Dutchess County are more resilient residents and visitors in Dutchess County. So that really is the key here. As we see some of the impacts of storms that have occurred recently, the folks that were better prepared were more resilient, and they were able to weather that storm, as significant as they may have been. So basically, we want to plan ahead and take measures to prepare for and reduce the effects of disasters, either natural or man-made. And there we have a nice photo of our Medical Reserve Corps, who we introduced a couple representatives earlier. Our Medical Reserve Corps is a very valuable resource here in Dutchess County. In fact, folks that got vaccinated at JCPenney probably recognize the vests that they wear when they are out and about. These are all volunteers, and about 50% of the Medical Reserve Corps come from medical backgrounds. The other 50% come from non-medical backgrounds, and we're always looking for volunteers to help us with our mission. Now, during COVID, if it were not for the Medical Reserve Corps, Dutchess County would not have been able to establish the PPE distribution, the COVID test kit distribution, or the vaccination pods that we had in place. We were vaccinating, how many, Susan? Over 1,000 people a day at JCPenney? And most of the individuals that were working at that location were volunteers with our Medical Reserve Corps. We had doctors, we had dentists, we had veterinarians, and then we had folks that work in other types of business, construction workers. We had attorneys, every background volunteering for our Medical Reserve Corps. And our concern now coming out of COVID was losing those volunteers. We want to retain those volunteers because traditionally when the disaster is over, you could lose those very valuable volunteers. So far, under the direction of our coordinator, Joe Ryan, we've been able to retain over 1,000 volunteers in our Medical Reserve Corps. And if any folks are interested in joining the ranks of the MRC, feel free to talk to Susan or any member from the Medical Reserve Corps, and they can tell you how to get started. It's really what I consider the inner circle of training opportunities for residents of Dutchess County. So even if you're not a big fan of helping out at COVID events, there are so many other events that the MRC is involved in, whether it be a senior citizen picnic where they're providing a first aid tent, whether it be the Dutchess County Animal Response Team, which falls under the MRC, where they're at the Dutchess County Fair. You may have seen them. And there's a regimen of training that you will have direct access to if you're an MRC member that the lay public may not have direct access to unless they're a member of the MRC. Is that fair to say, Susan? Very good. So we ask people, how well are you prepared? As we travel around Dutchess County, and we have some people that are well prepared for emergencies, right? How many people in this room feel you're well prepared for an emergency? Raise your hand if you feel you're well prepared. That's fine. You don't have to participate. No bag for you. No. How about this? I have thought about preparing for emergencies and have gathered some supplies. That's pretty much everybody, right? We've all thought about it. We don't like to think about emergencies, but when we have an opportunity and we have a few free minutes, you know what? We may gather some supplies. Most people are in that position, right? I know that it's important to prepare for emergencies, but I have not done so. You don't have to raise your hand. There's always people out there. We're busy, right? We're trying to make ends meet. It's been a tough 2.5 years for a lot of people, and it's still tough for a lot of people. So people are working 2 jobs. They're trying to hustle it out to pay their bills. They don't often have the opportunity to prepare for emergencies, right? We get that. That's why tonight we're going to give you an opportunity to get some knowledge and some tools to get started. I do not know how to prepare for a disaster or emergency, and I have no plans in place. You don't have to raise your hands, but there are people out there that don't know where to start. I mean, is that fair to say? Some people don't know where to start, and that's why we're happy that we're able to offer this training. So here's some of the barriers to being prepared that we've found. What has prevented you from being prepared? Well, I don't think anything's going to happen or likely to happen. How can you say that now in 2022, right? I mean, some folks feel that it's just not worth their time, and statistically, maybe nothing's going to happen. Well, I got news for you. We're seeing more things happen now than we have in the past. We'll just leave it at that at this moment. I can't afford all the supplies. That's legitimate, a legitimate concern. That's why we're going to get you started here tonight with a preparedness starter kit. I don't like to think about disasters. Well, nobody likes to think about disasters. Unfortunately, turn on any TV channel and you're going to see some level of disaster going on. I have no time to plan. Well, that's a fair thing to say for a lot of people, right? I know help will come when I need it. Well, most of the time, help will come when you need it. But during times of emergency and disaster, the emergency services may be overwhelmed, right? And there may be a delay. So we want folks to be able to be prepared and help themselves, be your own first responder, right, in those times, because the first responders may be delayed. So tonight, the object of the game here is to talk about understanding the risks, especially here locally, Dutchess County, right? We're going to talk about making a plan. We're going to talk about building a kit. In fact, we're going to give you, each family here tonight is going to receive one of these preparedness starter kits. Of course, the Dutchess County seal is on this because County Executive Marcus Molinaro required that, and he also requires me to say his name 3 times. So that's one. That's one. We got that. But these are actually paid for with federal grant money. As a county, we are eligible to receive Homeland Security funding for certain initiatives. Citizens preparedness has been a priority within the state and the national priorities for the last number of years. We've taken this program and used it to leverage grant money to get these kits because we believe we should be giving you something tangible when you attend this training, right? Uh-oh, power outage. No. We'll talk more about the kit once we get closer to that. And then stay informed. We're going to talk about how you can stay informed. There's so much technology out there, right? It can get confusing, it can get overwhelming. We're going to talk about how we can communicate with you and how you can communicate with us. So first, understanding the risks. So we want you to know the types of hazards in our community and how to respond to them. Be aware of any warning and notification systems available in the area, right? So Dutchess County, nearly 300,000 residents, not including those who work or attend college in the county, but as a whole, about 300,000 residents, right? 1/3 of the county's population is right here in this part of the county, right? So as an emergency planner, why is that something we want to be mindful of, that 1/3 of the county's population happens to be concentrated in this area right here? Because if we need to move people, evacuate people, or shelter people in place, having that type of density in this part of the county is something we need to take into account of when we're planning, right? So we need to understand the major thoroughfares that are in this area. We'll talk about that in a few minutes, and how to evacuate if we need to evacuate. We are a combination of urban and rural communities, right? So down here in the southwest quadrant, town of Fishkill, village of Fishkill, city of Beacon, town of Wapacher, town of East Fishkill, even the town of Poughkeepsie, south side, right? And then we have areas like the town of Stanford, the town of Washington, town of Pine Plains, where there are actually more cows than people in some respects, right? Which is totally different than this part of the county. So we have a combination of different types of communities here in Dutchess County. So obviously our county borders along the Hudson River on the west side. We have numerous watersheds that are prone to flooding, including the Wapachers Creek, the Fishkill Creek, especially here in the town of Fishkill, the 10-mile river watershed, which is on the eastern side of the county. We have limited north to south and east to west transportation corridors outside the major thoroughfares. So here in the town of Fishkill, what's one example of a major thoroughfare that's in this town?
84.
Interstate 84, right? A lot of things are traveling on Interstate 84 at any given moment, right? Lots of different things. If we need to evacuate a particular area, that's a major thoroughfare. What other east-west thoroughfares are here in the town of Fishkill? Route 52, right out here, right? What about north-south? Route 9, train line, yep. Also, train lines can't be forgotten either for transportation, right? So the major thoroughfares that are in this part of the county are significant. You get a little bit further to the east, you have the Taconic State Parkway. How many people have noticed the signs here in the town of Fishkill that say Emergency Evacuation Route A? Does anybody know what those are? So when I got this job in 2014, you do?
Yeah, they are, I think, gathering points.
So yeah, let me expand on what it is, because when I got this job in 2014, right, and I'm supposed to be in charge of all this stuff, I'm like, what are those? So those are Indian Point evacuation routes. And what you're seeing here in the town of Fishkill is you're seeing the evacuation routes coming from the western side of Putnam County, bringing people up 9D or across 52 to 84, and then 84 back down into Brewster for a reception area for Indian Point. Putnam County is what they call a RAD county, radiation county, that has plans, are required to have plans for Indian Point, whereas Dutchess County does not, is not required at this time. Back in the day, we were. We're not required to have evacuation planning for Indian Point. Now, the good news is Indian Point is in the process of being decommissioned. The bad news is it's going to be 30 years. So, you know, until the uranium is no longer active. But that said, when you see those evacuation routes, that's what those are. They don't have anything to do with what we're talking about here tonight with respect to normal emergencies. So 2 commuter rail lines plus Amtrak we also have here in Dutchess County, right? We're aware of that. Hudson Valley Regional Airport plus general aviation airstrips, 1 large electrical substation, 1 telecommunications switching station, the Iroquois pipeline, the New York City aqueduct, right? So in my town, in the town of Wapacher, the Chelsea area happens to be an area in the town of Wapacher that doesn't have municipal water, right? And the irony of the whole thing is that running underneath Chelsea is the New York City aqueduct, right? So my understanding is back in the 1930s when they were building these aqueducts, Dutchess County said, we don't want to have any reservoirs. We don't want to opt into any of those things that New York City wants us to have in order to benefit directly from that water, and that's why we have no access to that water. That's my understanding. However, in the town of Wapager, we were able to actually work with New York City because when they're currently doing a major construction project to the aqueduct, they needed water to do the project, so we were able to provide them with town water in our town to assist them with that particular construction project. And part of the deal is that hopefully one day we may have access to that water. So believe it or not, that water that runs under Dutchess County, and it most likely runs under a portion of the town of Fishkill also, they won't tell you how much of New York City's water that is. But believe me, it is over 51% of the drinking water in New York City that runs under Dutchess County. Now, could that be a security concern? You think? Have you ever seen the New York City DEP, Department of Environmental Protection, police cars? That's security for that entire system. So you'll see the New York City DEP hazardous material trucks too, right? There's an entire division that works to protect that water supply for obvious reasons. And of course, post 9/11, that security is really ramped up. So that's a major critical infrastructure that runs under Dutchess County. So looking at Dutchess County from the sky here, mass gathering events are something else that we want to keep in mind when we're preparing or we're planning, right? As a county, there's a number of mass gathering events that occur, including the Dutchess County Fair, which attracts nearly 500,000 visitors over a 6-day period, right? The Dutchess County Fair is the largest mass gathering in Dutchess County. There could be 35 to 50,000 people on that site at any given moment over that 6-day period, right? Sheep and Wool just happened last weekend or the weekend before. Anyone ever been to the Sheep and Wool Festival at the Dutchess County Fair grounds? That is the largest fiber fair in the Northeast now, 35,000 people per day. So what could possibly go wrong at a mass gathering like that? What do you think the number one hazard is to a mass gathering at the Dutchess County Fairgrounds? Weather. Weather is the number one concern for those types of events, because when you have that many people on a property that can't shelter in place, what do you think we have to ask people to do if we have an imminent weather situation approaching? They have to go to their cars. If they can't fit in the buildings, they have to go to their cars. So there are 3 places in the Dutchess County Fair where they're monitoring weather at all times. They have a very proactive emergency team that works during that event. And where do you think they're monitoring weather from? I'll tell you, number 1 is at the command post, which is the State Police Building. Where else would they be monitoring weather, do you think, at the Dutchess County Fair? Take a guess. What's that? It would be NOAA National Weather Service weather, but what geographic areas of the fair do you think they are monitoring? So they have the largest Ferris wheel on wheels, so they are monitoring weather at the Midway, okay? Because if wind gusts get over 30 or 35 miles per hour, they shut the rides down, right? Where else are they monitoring weather? At the concert stage. And you've probably seen videos on YouTube where some of these stages come down. One just came down last week in Las Vegas during an event. Luckily, nobody was under it. But the staging company that runs those concerts at the Dutchess County Fair is the same staging company that runs Times Square New Year's Eve. They are legit. They're monitoring weather at multiple locations. If the wind picks up, they're going to crank the speakers down so they're not up in the air. The whole stage comes down. So my point here is weather is the number one impact at those types of events, and we must always be prepared if you're attending one of those events. If the sky changes very quickly, if there's a weather system coming in, understand that you need to get into a safe place. Other mass gathering events that happen in Dutchess County, how about anybody know of any other mass gatherings where a lot of people are in one place? K-Fest, yeah. That's only 3,000 people. Well, okay, so we'll talk about that. So here in the town of Fishkill, Dutchess Stadium obviously is a very popular venue, right? They have a great emergency plan, which understand that the average Renegades game is going to have 4,000 people anyway, right? So if they have other events that have more than 4,000 people, they're going to do additional planning, whether it be K-Fest or hopefully K-Fest officially comes back, or I Love the 90s, right? Those types of events have additional planning associated with them as well. How about the Stormville Flea Market? Do a lot of people go to the Stormville Flea Market? So back in the days before COVID, the Stormville Flea Market had its designated day. Usually sees about 5,000 people on a day, right? It's handled very efficiently. Generally, there's no problems. One Saturday morning, I get a phone call from the town of East Fishkill Police Department saying, hey, we need to change those signs that are over the Taconic State Parkway and over 84, those big electronic signs. We need them to say, don't come to the Stormville Flea Market. The parking lots are closed. And I said, well, this is at like 8:30 in the morning. I said, what's going on? They're like, it's gridlock over here. Well, what happened was, how many people here have seen the television show Flea Market Flip? What's the name of the star? She was on, I think, ABC. Laura Spencer? Right, yeah. Anyway, so Laura Spencer had tweeted out that morning that they would be filming the season premiere at the Stormville Flea Market. And instead of getting 5,000 people for the day, they got 5,000 people at the beginning of the day. And that's what caused the craziness there. So it just shows you the power of social media, right? I guess this could be an example of the power of social media, right? How did you folks learn about this event? Facebook, email, friend, the town? All right, well, Ozzy, you got a heck of a promotion element going on here. This is good. Impressive. Multiple emails? All right. I love it. So we want to understand the risks overall. Public health emergencies and pandemics we added to the slideshow, right? Flooding, excessive heat, extreme cold, thunderstorms, winter storms, tornadoes, and other high wind storms. These are all examples of natural or weather-related hazards that could affect Dutchess County. Does anyone know that picture on the left, on the top left? Does anybody know where that is? Nope, that's actually Warriors Park in the city of Poughkeepsie, right? So hopefully we never see that again. Now that was after Hurricane Irene and Lee. Do you remember when that coastal surge occurred? So the Hudson River is a tidal estuary, right? So it actually flows in two directions. This was an example of what happens when the storm pushes the water up the river. And the entire park was underwater. In fact, to the left of that photo would be the Rip Van Winkle apartments, and people that have lived in the city or around it said they have never seen that in 40 years. So that's a red flag. It hasn't happened since. Hopefully it doesn't happen again, but these are the types of things that can happen, right? Unexpected things. Understanding the risk for technological and man-made hazards, extended power outages. You folks don't get power outages in Fishkill, do you? We just had one in the room. So, yes, let me just say this. So my office works with Central Hudson and NYSEG, I will say, probably on a weekly basis. The Public Service Commission has, and the supervisor knows this, they have really tightened up on these utilities and really have put a lot of deliverables on them with respect to preparation, right? So you see the trucks out there cutting the trees back on a regular basis, trying to protect the lines. They have to try to get power back on within 24 hours. Sometimes that's not always possible, but we have to be prepared for extended power outages. And an extended power outage is defined as 2 or 3 days or longer, right? So that can be problematic for certain people who may have a challenge with a long-term power outage. Vulnerable populations, right? So vulnerable populations, and we're reading the information out of Hurricane Ian right now, and tragically, many of the individuals that lost their life during Hurricane Ian were vulnerable individuals, senior citizens that were unable to evacuate themselves, folks that got caught up and thought they could drive across a road that was covered in water. So vulnerable populations is really a focus for our county. It's really a focus for our municipalities. In fact, we just launched the Dutchess County Access and Functional Needs Registry. The Access and Functional Needs Registry gives individuals an opportunity to opt in to a list so that we can actually contact people during an emergency, right? And we'll talk more about that in a little bit. It's designed for folks that cannot evacuate themselves, right? And if there are people aging in place that have mobility issues, perhaps they have a home health aide come in during the day, but then they're by themselves at night. We want to know where they are ahead of time in Dutchess County, all right? We want to have a snapshot of where those folks are. So that's something we'll talk about in a few. Communication outages, how's that cell service down here in Fishkill lately? better than me, I think.
We get phone calls on 9D going to Orange County, right?
I shut my 5G off. I'll be honest with you. I just did this the other day because I have an iPhone 13 and it keeps going to 5G, right? If anyone that has, you'll see it. It's looking for 5G at all times. And if it's not getting enough, then you're dropping calls or you can't get the data. So you can actually turn it so that it doesn't search for the 5G, right? You can turn it to LTE or whatever you want to do so that it's not looking for that 5G, because my personal opinion is it's not fully rolled out yet, right? It better not be fully rolled out, because if this is it, I'm not happy.
Here in just December of last year, the town of Fishkill has passed a significant cell tower law to protect the citizens of Fishkill from the cell tower companies coming in to do what they want. So we lead the country, not just Dutchess County, but the country, in the cell tower law. So it's a good thing to protect us from the 5G people who just want to put things right in the backyard.
And that's really what it's all about, right? This is all about boots on the ground, grassroots, home rule, right? That's what we're about here in New York State, home rule. Are we still home rule? Okay, I'm just checking. But we want to make sure that the towns, villages, and cities are empowered, right, to act on behalf of the residents. And having that type of control is important, right? So communication outages, we need to be prepared for those. Supply chain issues, people didn't even know what supply chain issues were until nothing was on the shelves. I mean, when are the supply chain issues going to be over with? That's what I'm wondering. Transportation interruptions, we talked about nuclear power a little bit, nuclear power incidents, Again, Indian Point, it was decided to decommission Indian Point, and that process has begun. Are there still plans in place? Yes, there are still plans in place for Indian Point. Hazardous materials situations, terrorism is obviously something that's always on our minds. Civil unrest, again, civil unrest, many folks that took this class before 2020 didn't really understand what civil unrest was until the summer of 2020, right? We need to be prepared for those types of things. And chemical and biological threats we are also prepared for. These are the types of risks that we face. What is Dutchess County's #1 threat or hazard? More specific.
This guy over here.
Who took this class already?
No, Dennis wanted to say something.
Go ahead, Dennis.
Just want to ask a question.
Sure.
Give a comment.
Sure, I need to take a drink anyway.
A lot of people don't realize that when these commuter trains go to bed at night, the toxic train cars take over.
Right.
I don't know if they ever do that or not,
Yeah.
but there's some hazardous chemicals going through our neighborhoods, chlorine oxides.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And these are, and my only question was, how will it take emergency preparedness to get to one of them train cars before you got a cloud of chlorine gas
Oh,
in
yeah.
the air?
Oh, yeah.
Before you can dissipate it and get it taken care of besides evacuation. I just said mock drills, let's do mock drills and prepare for this.
So yes, so with respect to Dennis's point is, let's not forget on the rails what's happening when the commuter trains are not running, right? So in this part of the county, Metro North is running between Poughkeepsie and Grand Central, right? But on the overnight, there are other things running on those rails, and many of them are garbage trains, right? But there's also trains that have chemicals on board that could be hazardous to residents, okay? We don't have Bakken crude on this side of the river, but we do have chlorine on this side of the river. We have a hazardous materials division here in Dutchess County and a local emergency preparedness committee, which at this particular time is exploring doing a commodity study, so we know exactly what products are coming through Dutchess County. So the local emergency preparedness committee is a committee that meets at my office. It is open to the public. They meet quarterly. And the idea with the LEPC, as it's referred to, it's a DOT right to know type of committee, right? It's a federally authorized committee. Each county should have one. Not every county does have one. But it's really to provide for first responders, municipalities, and the public to understand what hazardous materials exist in our community, right? So that is something I can give you more information about later on. No, that one's not. That one is it's a small, generally a small group of 9 or 10 people. It is open to the public. I'll be happy to provide you with, I can give you the minutes so you can see what's been going on at that. It's not a lot of activity going on. It's really just monitoring what the regulated chemicals in the county, what they are. And a lot of the locations like Global Foundries, IBM, some of the propane companies that have a large quantity on site, we make sure that those towns and those fire departments know what is on those properties, and we put them in touch with the facility manager so they can plan properly. It gets a little more challenging with the moving products, right? We all see these big mobile super tankers driving up and down Route 9. Well, we know what's in those, right? We can see it. They're properly placarded, 1203. You can see what's in those. They have routes that are on file. But there are many chemicals and many products that if it's under 1,000 pounds, they don't have to have a placard, right? So that's where it can be challenging. So we're working to better identify what's traveling through the county so we can be better prepared. I can tell you that we as a county take this very seriously. We have specialized teams that are willing and able to respond at a moment's notice. And for something on a rail, we would be using mutual aid from our hazmat consortium, which involves Putnam County and Westchester County. So Dutchess County's #1 threat or hazard that can affect the most people in the county. When we did this in 2022, it was pandemic. When we did it every other year before this, what do you think it was? Flooding. Flooding is #1. The problem when you do these hazard vulnerability assessments, you're sitting with a group of people in the room and you're looking at historically what's impacted the county. You're looking at what's impacting the county right now, right? And a lot of times these can be not as accurate as the whole picture because you're looking at the moment. Pandemic obviously is front of mind for everyone. That's why it was #1 on this particular hazard assessment. But overall, if you look over the past 5 years, you're going to see flooding as #1. Cyber attack is #2 on here because we have seen cyber attacks occur in the Hudson Valley, and cyber attack is a very serious threat to government right now. Sustained power outage, three days or more, we talked about that. That's also at the top of the list. Flooding normally would be #1. Civil unrest moved up the list because of what happened in 2020, right? And we saw civil unrest across the country. Pandemic obviously moved to the top of the list because we are hopefully done with the pandemic. Hopefully we're done with the last pandemic. That's all I'll say. Active shooter. Here's the sad thing about active shooter on this list. Statistically, an active shooter incident is very low on these types of hazard vulnerability assessments. The reason why they chart high is because every time we do these, one just happened. And here we stand. Every time that I do this class, one just happened. And one just happened. Yep. Yep. So, sure.
Now, do you feel that there are more active shooters recently than in the past, or is it just because it's just more televised?
There's more events. There's definitely more events. In fact, I'm responsible for the county's domestic terrorism preparedness plan, which is a new requirement for counties in New York State where we have to have a plan filed by December 31st of this year, right? One of the components within that plan is active shooter hostile event response for first responders, right? I teach that. I've been doing that for the last 2 months across Dutchess County to first responders so they can understand what they're getting into at the beginning of these events, because there are many situations where first responders will respond to a situation and not realize what it actually is, right? Active shooters are different than shootings, right? Shootings happen regularly, unfortunately, here in the Hudson Valley. Shootings happen regularly. Active shooters should not be happening regularly. One just happened here. Courtyard at Marriott, town of Poughkeepsie. That was not just a shooting. That was an individual who shot an innocent person who he had no connection with, and then went outside and shot the entire building up and shot the neighboring building up. So that is not a normal situation. Not that a shooting should be normal. That is an active shooter. So these events, there is, some theories that, well, there's more coverage. No, there are more events that are occurring. We in Dutchess County are in the process of creating a threat management program, okay, where we're going to have individuals from law enforcement, mental health, emergency services, county attorney, school districts working together to help identify these threats and stop them before they happen. We must be proactive. There has got to be a change. We can't, every time one of these things happen, we stomp our feet and say, well, what are we going to do about it, right? Well, in Dutchess County, we are doing something about it. You're going to hear more about this as it gets rolled out. It's not really something we want on the front page of the newspaper, but we must be more proactive to identify these individuals. Right now, we have situations all across this country where a teacher will see someone exhibiting certain characteristics and not know who to contact, right? Mental health may have contact with an individual and not know who to report it to, right? Law enforcement may have an individual exhibiting certain characteristics, and they may end up in the law enforcement silo, right? We are developing one collection point in Dutchess County that's multidisciplinary, so that everyone that has a concern with no reservation can speak to that group and say, listen, this person needs to be evaluated, attention needs to be given. We have to be proactive.
We don't do catch and release like they do in New York City, right? So if they catch these shooters, they hold them.
That's another whole thing. We're not going to get into that. But I can tell you that here in Dutchess County, the district attorney takes every single situation very seriously. That's all I can say on that. I don't get into politics for obvious reasons in this presentation. And sometimes we can inadvertently go down that road. I want to make sure we are providing you with the best factual information on how to prepare for any type of situation that we talk about here. So,
But you also have to understand that we as residents
Mhm.
and civilians,
sure,
okay, that if we see something, we have to act too.
of course.
Because if we see somebody walking with a trench coat at 90 degrees weather
Yeah.
down Main Street,
I agree.
You lose focus. Otherwise, if you just let it go, next thing you know, half a mile down the block, you're
Right.
shooting everybody.
I agree. See something, say something. We must continue to follow see something, say something. And we can't be afraid to say something. And that's, unfortunately, that's what we're seeing now. People are afraid to say something. We need to create a collection point that is non-biased, collecting factual information where people don't have reservations about reporting a concern. So, that said, major transportation accidents on here, hazmat release in transit, hazmat release, hurricane, tropical storm. These are all the types of things that came up on our list this time around. Back in 2017 was a very significant year for hurricanes. Anything over $100 billion is a significant hurricane, and in this case, that year, Hurricane Harvey, Hurricane Maria, even Hurricane Irma was significant. And that was also the first year we started seeing those significant wildfires on the West Coast, which have happened every single year since. In addition to the normal disasters that occurred that year, this was and I think 2022, based on Hurricane Ian and Fiona, is going to be another year with setting records, unfortunately. But the point of being here this evening, folks, we want you to understand that you and your family are really the foundation of preparedness, right? You must be prepared to help yourself and your family in a disaster. You're your best resource, first and foremost. We want folks to be more prepared and resilient. Understand the role and responsibility of government in a disaster. Plan with your family and know your neighbors, right? So you and your family are the foundation of preparedness, and then if you get into trouble, you really should have some level of connection with your neighbors, right? You really should know your neighbors. You may not like your neighbors, but you really should know your neighbors, right? I drive down my street and I wave at this one neighbor every time. He never waves back. I try, but I'm the guy that's waving and he's just pretending he doesn't see me. But research has shown that if we know our neighbors, we're going to be better off, right? Your neighbors may be needed to help you, or you may be needed to help your neighbors, right? It's common sense. Community as a whole, right? The fact that you're all here, this is a huge crowd of people here, right? The fact that you all came out here and gave up your night to learn about preparedness shows that you have a strong community, Ozzy, strong community here. And I will say that your forward, proactive communication with the residents, making sure they know about these types of events, that's key, right? Knowing each other, getting people in the same room, having conversations, right? Networking. These are all key positives when we have an emergency, right? What I tell people in my business is, I want to know the fire chiefs, right? I want to know the police chiefs. I want to know the mayors, right? The mayors, village mayors, city mayors, town supervisors. We communicate on a regular basis with my office. And that's by design, because when an emergency occurs, we want to know each other ahead of time. We want to exchange business cards before the disaster, right? Same goes for neighbors, right? Know each other, know your community. Research has also shown that if you're involved in an organization, whether it be an Elks Club or a Boy Scout troop or a faith-based organization, you're going to be more resilient because you're going to have your own network of support. That's key when it comes to community. Local government, that would be right here, Town of Fishkill, right? Your town is here to assist you as well. There are some incidents where the town is going to get involved and assist the residents, right? Your local fire departments, your local EMS, your local police department, that's your local government. They're going to be assisting during an emergency. County government, where I come from. I'm from the county, I can help, right? What do you need? There's been many times where the town of Fishkill has asked for specific resources from the county, whether it be sandbags to assist with a flooded out area, whether it be those big variable message boards to put up if we need to put an announcement out. At one time, there was a water truck parked right in this parking lot outside because one of the water systems was failing, right? Those are all types of things that the county can assist with to provide resources to a town. The state government is also there if the county needs resources, right? But you'll see that this pyramid is getting smaller and smaller, right? The higher you get up on the pyramid here, the less immediate response you're going to get. Federal government is on top. FEMA is not a first responder. Okay, I remember back in Katrina, everybody was screaming and yelling, "Where's FEMA? Where's FEMA? They should be here saving us from the roofs of our houses." That's not their job. Yes, the FEMA task forces will arrive within 5 days to assist the local authorities, but disasters start locally and end locally. We must be prepared on the local level. The town of Fishkill has had a very active disaster preparedness committee. And I remember going to meetings here pre-COVID, I think on a quarterly basis. And I know that Hal's talking about getting that back up and running. And what that does is it gets all those stakeholders in the same room, right? It gets the village of Fishkill and the town of Fishkill together, right? It gets everybody in the same room to talk through particular scenarios. And in fact, some exercises have been done over the years on different types of things that could happen. That is key, right? Because FEMA's not going to be responding into the town of Fishkill to help you in that first 24 hours. So FEMA will be a key component with recovery, though, okay? Here in Dutchess County, we were able to apply for individual assistance through FEMA. Oh, he says closing comments. Are we done? Oh, okay. All right. Please get to your closing comments. No. Hal will speak at the end, definitely. In a recent storm, we had FEMA here in Dutchess County. We were able to get to a certain dollar amount to get public assistance for all of the public entities and individual assistance for those that had damage from that storm in Dutchess County, right? Other counties around here did not get that, but we were out on the street basically with FEMA across Dutchess County getting those numbers, and we will do that if we are impacted again to help you get that assistance. So we want to make a plan, right? So in a perfect world, you should have a family communications plan, all right? And for those that are here that are in high school or in elementary school, listen up, because you're going to be a key part of this. Shelter-in-place plan is also another consideration, evacuation plan, and then you should be familiar with how plans work at your work and schools, right? Let's talk about the family communications plan first, right? Getting the family together. Communication with your family, there's a key. Talk to each other, right? Know how to communicate with your family. We suggest that you keep a written log of phone numbers. Why? Well, we don't remember anybody's number anymore. So if you dropped your phone in a puddle and you lost all your numbers, you can't even call anybody, right? So write down the important numbers on a piece of paper. There's a concept, right? Don't save them in the notes on your phone. No. tangible, right? Know how to get information from community resources. We'll talk about that. Know how your child's school communicates and conveys information and instructions, right? So I have, my son is in the Universal Pre-K at St. Mary's in Fishkill, right? And I'm just amazed with the amount of communication I'm getting from the school, everything that's going on, whether it be the carnival or whether it be the school picture day today. Can't wait to see what that's going to look like. But they're communicating regularly, right? And if there is an emergency or an imminent notification, I know how that communication system works, right? And I know who the point of contact is there. If a school has a lockdown, are they going to let you come on the property to get your child? No, they're not. So you need to know that ahead of time, right? It's important that you know that. Utilize text message and social media, radio message. We'll talk about that in a second here. So write down your plan with your family and give it to your family members, right? Something you want to write down. It just basically will codify it in your mind as you're talking it out, writing it down, sharing it with your family members. Know who will do what, where, and with whom, right? You may want to perhaps designate a family member out of this immediate area to be the point of contact in case you can't reach each other, right? Something you should consider. Include your extended family. We talked about the lockdown policy. Know what your employer will do also. Know what your employer will do if there is an emergency, either involving your employer or if you have an emergency. Will your employer even let you leave? Know those things ahead of time. Keep important numbers and documents together as you start your family plan. What if we can't communicate, right? So if the cell sites go down and we can't call each other, we have to have a plan. How many people here in the room still have a landline? Okay. How many people in the room have a landline that's not connected to your cable package? There's like 2, right? How many people here have the rotary dial phone on the wall in the kitchen with the copper line? Yeah, there they are. Smartest people in the room, right? I will tell you, though, I found out this week that Verizon's pulling the copper out of all these areas now, which, it's not good, not good. But that said, understand where your restrictions are going to be, right? If your cable goes out, does your phone go out? It could, right? If your cell phone doesn't work and your house phone doesn't work, right? Have a plan on what you're going to do, right? Are we going to have everybody go to a specific location to meet up? These are the types of things you want to think about, considerations, right? Again, landlines are down, cell phone lines overwhelmed. You may remember back on 9/11 when the cell phones wouldn't go through for a little while, for a lot of while, especially if you had somebody in New York City you were trying to reach, right? Have a plan ahead of time. That could happen. We're so dependent on cell phone technology, it could be a real mini disaster, right? We can't communicate. We do have plans in place, though, here in Dutchess County. If we lose cell service for a period of days, we do have plans where we can bring in mobile cell sites in cooperation with the different cell carriers. They're called COWs, Cell on Wheels. You may see them on TV in the disaster areas. They bring them in, but it takes a couple days. They may also bring in those big trailers where people can charge their cell phones on. But again, it takes 3 to 5 days for these types of assets to come in. So we have to plan ahead of time. Power outage, inability to charge cell phones and other mobile devices. You can always charge them in your car if you have the plug, right? Right? And the cell phone companies do a great job changing the plugs, right? So you may have the
portable charger.
Right, portable charger, those bricks, right? Batteries, they're good to have. So think about these things ahead of time because you don't want to be in a position where, I'll just charge it in my car and, wait, this charger's from 2 cell phones ago, right? Trust me, that can happen. The internet could be down too, right? We may not have the ability to even get on the internet. And for the millennials, that could be a problem, right? So plan ahead. If you're relying too much on any of this technology, understand that it may not exist for a time period. So have backup forms of communication. There you go. There's that battery right there. Share your communications plan with your family. Use a third party to let family members know you're safe. That's another strategy you can use. The mobile charging packs, if possible. These are things you should consider, okay? Now remember, family members may become separated, landlines and or cell phones may not work, cell phones may become overloaded with calls. Text messages may still go through, or they may not. Consider what you may have to do to overcome these issues. So just think about this ahead of time, discuss it with your family. This way it's not catching you totally off guard if this happens. Have a plan to meet, right? Decide where to meet in the event of an emergency. Pick 3 locations. One could be home, right? If you can't get back to your home, a pre-identified relative or friend who lives nearby in that vicinity, okay? If you can't remain in that vicinity, consider having a pre-identified location out of the immediate area, right? These are recommendations. Practice and review. Communicate with your family. If you have young kids, have this conversation so they understand what we're trying to achieve here. Shelter in place. So we talked about evacuation, and that can be scary, right? The trend in emergency management right now is to try to not evacuate people unless you absolutely have to. Why? Why do you think that's the trend?
Overload.
Risk versus reward. Are we going to create more of a problem by trying to move people, especially vulnerable people, right? Evacuating nursing homes, not something you want to do. We just exercised that in Rhinebeck a couple weeks ago. Not easy, right? Evacuating any population is a lot of work, and where do you put them, right? I got the call for that shooting at the Marriott, and they said we have to evacuate the hotel now because they found some things that were of concern. I said, okay, where do you want to put them? I don't know. How do you want to evacuate? I don't know. So what we did was we got county transit buses, got them rolling, right? It was a Marriott. I said there's got to be more portfolio hotels right here. Sure enough, there's a Residence Inn down by Five Guys. We moved them all down there, and we were able to basically make our problem theirs, which is always good in emergency management, right? Because now that they're there, they can transport them back, right? So everyone was safe, luckily. But if we're going to move an entire community someplace, think about that. Where are we going to put these people? And once we put them in a shelter, we own them. We have to feed them. We have to provide for them in every possible way. If they have pets, what do? We have to accommodate pets. It's the law now. Post-Katrina, we now have to accommodate pets because research shows that people will not evacuate without their pets. How do we accommodate pets? We have to open a separate shelter because we can't bring the pets into the human shelter. Why? Allergies, among other things.
And you create more of a problem.
You think?
A lot of people
See how much work this is, right?
emotional disturbed.
Of course. And of course, go ahead.
You forgot about another active shooting, the pizza place down in Shoprite Plaza.
Oh, of course. Well,
6 people inside when they got shot.
not to dwell on things, but of course, you know, when it rains, it pours. So in the middle of the incident that's going on at the Marriott, what happens in Fishkill? Somebody shoots out Antonella's window. So yeah, that was a, well, I'll just say that was a single shooting, but that shouldn't have happened either. So, but yes, that did occur. So sheltering in place has become the real push that we want to try to do if possible. And in order to shelter in place, we have to be able to communicate with people so they understand it's time to shelter in place, right? We also have to make sure people understand what shelter in place means, because a lot of people don't know what shelter in place means. In fact, right now, if a tornado was coming, and actually we did have a straight line wind event in the town of Fishkill near Dutchess Stadium a couple years ago. It was a tornado in Newburgh, came right across, right? So what happens is, as soon as the National Weather Service sees rotation on the radar, your phone's going to go buzz tornado warning. That's geographically located, okay? If you get a tornado warning on your phone, you need to pay attention because that is a geographic notification to you. Where you are standing is in the immediate vicinity of a tornado warning. A tornado warning means there's one happening, okay? Tornado watch means conditions are conducive. Tornado warning means there is a tornado happening. So in the case of the town of Fishkill, it was a tornado in Newburgh, came across the river, broke up a little bit, and became a straight line wind event. Those trees are still horizontal if you look in the woods there by Dutchess, across from Dutchess Stadium. That said, folks need to be aware that when your phone says that, it's important. We'll talk more about that notification process. We don't have time to evacuate people when you have a situation like that going on, right? The National Weather Service notification will say tornado warning, shelter in place. What do you think people did besides shelter in place? Well, besides the people that took the videos of it. People called 911 and said, what does shelter in place mean? I'm not kidding. I'm not kidding. So we need to make sure people understand what that means, right? There you go. Severe weather, shelter in place. Stay indoors. Do not go out and film it and put it on YouTube. All right? Don't do that. In some circumstances, it's safer to stay put than to leave. Now, in some situations, sheltering in place may require putting a barrier between yourself and the outdoor threat. They call it sealing the room. What would be an example of a situation where you may consider sealing the room? Hazardous materials release, okay? Say you have a, well, yes, that's another example, but in this context, it could be a hazardous materials release, okay? Use common sense to assess the threat. Continue to follow instructions that you receive, and I'll tell you how you're going to receive those instructions. Shelter in place. Bring your family and your pets inside. Don't forget about the pets, okay? Lock doors, close windows, vents, and fireplace dampers. Turn off all fans, air conditioning, forced air units. Go into interior room with few or no windows. Seal the windows and doors with plastic and duct tape. These are all things you may want to consider depending on what the situation is. A real basic example of sheltering in place is when we get a bad snowstorm and we ask you to please stay off the roads. That's one basic example of sheltering in place. We want you to be prepared to stay in your home for 5 to 7 days. This is depending on what the situation is. We say 5 to 7 days because we want you to be prepared for 5 to 7 days. Doesn't mean you're going to really be stuck in your home for 5 to 7 days. Keep non-perishable food items, emergency water, safety supplies, maintain your home in working order. Know some basic skills to keep your home functioning, right? We don't talk about shutting off the gas or shutting off the water in this class, but if you learn more about emergency preparedness, those are some considerations if you feel comfortable and qualified to do so. And then you're going to listen for instructions from local authorities. So that right there, that's a radio.
Battery upgrade.
You're going to receive a transistor-style radio in your backpack.
Whoa.
All right? You will. Yes, you will. Some of you may know, before I go to work at Dutchess County, I also work here in the town of Fishkill on the radio. I'm the news guy on K104 in the morning. So radio still is relevant, okay? Often, if other technologies are down, that's all you got, right? CB radios? I don't know. Breaker 19, I'm not sure, but hey, it could work. Getting credible information is key though, right? So the emergency alert system still exists. Used to be the emergency broadcast system. Beep, this is a test, right? The emergency alert system allows us to interrupt radio, television, broadcasts, and put out important information. So the radio still exists as a resource. Evacuation planning we'll touch on real quick. Have a plan, and what I tell people in these types of forums is, yeah, we all know about the major thoroughfares, right? We all know about those. But you folks that live here in Fishkill, you know the back roads, right? You may have to use those back roads to evacuate. So know your way around town so that you're not stuck with everybody else on 52 and 84. And by the way, Supervisor, those 2 traffic lights need to get fixed because they got the 2 new traffic lights at 52 and 84 that are hanging in front of each other, and they don't seem too synchronized. I'll just say that. He'll have it fixed by the end of the week. No problem. He'll get that fixed tomorrow. No problem. But so everyone else is going to be going that way, right? My point is, know the alternate routes. That's going to be key if you have to evacuate. Evacuations occur hundreds of times each year, not here in Dutchess, right? But where do evacuations occur a lot in this country? What's that?
Out west of the fires.
Yes. In fact, out in the wildland fire areas in California and those areas, there's a big debate in emergency management right now because they have found that evacuating everyone too early can lead to gridlock. And you may have seen a couple years ago, people died in their cars, stuck in traffic due to the evacuation procedure. So they're changing the process out there on how and when to evacuate because they don't have a lot of major thoroughfares in those mountainous areas where those fires are occurring. So yes, there's a lot of evacuations going on out there. They can occur with very little or no time to spare. Have a plan of where you and your family will meet with members leaving from home, work, school, or other locations. Have a family point of contact outside your immediate local area for family members to check in with. Basically the same thing we talked about before. Have that third party identified, so if we can't reach each other, we can call, Aunt Sally, and she's going to know what's going on, something like that. Think about that. Yes?
Just another comment. I'm a detailed person. Valuable, critical papers should be put together in a package that you can grab and take with you.
Oh, yes. Yep. And we're going to talk about that in a second. You definitely want to consider that as well. So plan safe potential evacuation routes, know the local routes, make plans for an ultimate destination once you're outside the area, make arrangements with family. We talked about this. If a family member is institutionalized, like in a nursing home or in a long-term care facility, know what their plan is for evacuation ahead of time. You may not be able to just go there and pick that person up. The nursing homes and the long-term care facilities have requirements where they have to have these plans in place. You should be familiar with those plans as well. Keep needed supplies and medications available, plan for all emergencies, plan how to evacuate with your pet. You can't leave your pet behind. You should not do that. Plan for other needs, vehicles, home security, utility, insurance, vital records, special needs, animals, safety skills. We'll talk about this. So now the deputy supervisor mentioned documents that you should have, right? What are some documents you want to have secured and available if you have to evacuate?
Insurance, Social Security.
Insurance, yep, ID, Social Security. What else? Birth certificate. You got to be able to prove who you are, right? Passport. If you're the owner of the property, what do you want to have? You want to have a deed or a copy of the mortgage or something, because why would you need that? Well, what happens is sometimes they'll close out an entire area and they'll only allow residents in if you can prove that's your property, right? And unfortunately, just like every other storm, you see there's a very small element that goes in and loots these types of disasters. And it's often difficult to maintain security, right? So understand you have to prove who you are, right?
Also money.
Yeah, we're going to get to that in a second, too. What's that?
A family photo, so you can track your loved ones.
Yes.
And get help from others. So
Good point, good point. Definitely, definitely.
You should put medications on that list.
Yep, that's coming up right here. We're going to get into that as we talk about building a kit. Now, before we talk about building a kit, I'm going to tell you what each one of your families here is going to get. And again, if it were up to me, I'd give every single person one of these tonight, but I don't have enough to do that. So every family will get one, and then we will have a mechanism to provide additional for folks that want additional ones, okay? There's a lot of people here. How many people are here? Do we know? 130.
Great, it's awesome. And we've only had,
Okay, no problem.
great.
We're going to make sure we're fair tonight, distributing them, but we're going to make them available to you if you need an additional one. So what's in here? Let's see. What are you going to get? And again, this kit right here was funded with federal grant money through the federal government for Dutchess County, courtesy of County Executive Mark Molinaro. That's two. All right, got it. All right, got it. So going through this, some basic items you're going to see in this kit. This is a dust mask. It's not an N95. It's a dust mask, okay? You're going to get a whistle. Why would you need a whistle? Ask him. That's good. All right. Thank you. We want to make sure that all the folks at home can hear us. I actually had residents call me that couldn't come because they don't want to drive at night, and I said, tune in. They're going to put it on the town channel, and we'll make sure that they can get a kit. So I'll be driving around the entire town of Fishkill for the next week. So there's a whistle in here which FEMA recommends to have. Why would you need a whistle? If you become incapacitated, you need to try to get somebody's attention, right? You got the dust mask, you got some gloves here to try to keep your hands clean. We have aqua tabs. What are these?
Stuff for water.
Water purification tablets, right? Which is key. We have an emergency poncho that can also be used as a water collection device. You're going to receive that. Some of these items have more than one use. They recommend having a light stick. Here's your light stick. Got some tissues here. Got a first aid kit, a 37-piece first aid kit. You have a flashlight that you don't need batteries for. You can pump it and it actually lights up. Okay, you're going to get that. You have an emergency blanket here as well. Okay. You have a transistor-style radio that actually works. Okay. The only thing I will say on the radio is I don't know if I trust the Power Max batteries. Yeah, the crank radios are great, but unfortunately I don't have those in here. So you probably want to get some better batteries for it, but you're going to get one of these radios. Okay. You're also going to get some emergency drinking water. The emergency drinking water is good for 5 years. Let's see here. Boy, since the last class, I need glasses.
You haven't done it in 6 years.
No, there's definitely, you get 3 years left on these because they've been sitting for 2 years. So you got 3 years left on the 5-year water, okay? All right. And then my favorite, most tasteful option here of the emergency food rations. I'm making sure tonight that you're going to get the lemon flavored, okay? You're going to get the lemon flavored one. All right. And of course, the nice backpack. So it's basically a lot of the items we're going to talk about right now, which in a perfect world you should have, right? So,
And you can put the documents in that bag.
of course, we're going to talk about what else you can put in there. So, as we build our own kit, this is your starter kit, all right? Why is it the starter kit? Because there's a lot of room in there to add to it, okay? In a perfect world, you're going to have a home kit, you're going to have a work kit, and a car kit. When I talk about a home kit, I'm envisioning something like that, right? Like a Rubbermaid container with a bunch of stuff in it, and we'll talk about what should be in there. But something bigger than that for your home. So this is what FEMA recommends you should have in your home kit. And all this information is at ready.gov. Ready.gov, you can go there, this way you don't have to write all this down. Ready.gov. So 1 gallon per person per day they recommend for water, all right? 1 gallon per person per day. Now, if you have a 105-pound German Shepherd like I do, don't forget about them. They're going to need at least a gallon a day, right? 3 to 5 day supply per person for food. They recommend that as well. You can go online, and there's a number of companies that sell these types of things, you know, for food and water. There's a debate out there in the emergency management world about water right now. Water in plastic bottles, they believe, you know, it should be replaced every year or so because there is some research to indicate that the plastic can actually come off into the water depending on the temperature that you're storing the water at. There are canned water cans you can buy now. They kind of look like beer cans. And then today, I learned about the boxed water that you can get, but it doesn't last as long. You can look at that. You got the battery-powered radio, flashlight with extra batteries, first aid kit, first aid manual. Learn first aid, right? That's even better. In fact, if you don't want to spend money on learning first aid, you can go on YouTube and you can find free videos that'll teach you a lot of things for free. We should all know basic first aid. Sanitation, hygiene supplies, matches, container, prescription medications or glasses. I know it's difficult to get extra prescription medications sometimes, especially right now with a lot of the restrictions going on. But if you do have the ability to maintain some prescription medications above and beyond what you use on a regular basis, have it in your kit. Important documents. We just talked about the important documents that you should consider and have in your kit. The whistle, which you got right here. Extra clothing. You might want to consider having extra clothing in your kit as well. Small manual kitchen tools, wrench or pliers, cash or coins.
Yep.
How much cash do you think you should have?
It's about $1,000 or $500.
There's no right answer. I just like to go $1,000
he's gonna have.
All right. Let's see. How about this side?
There's no right answer.
Something sense.
You don't want to have 10 $100 bills.
There you go.
Why?
Because it's, you have to carry small denominations.
Because you might not be able to break it, right? Your debit card might not work.
Nope.
Your credit card might not work. Your Venmo might not work. So you want to have cash, whatever you're comfortable with, right? But break it up. Have it, singles, fives, tens, maybe some coins if you want. Local maps. Those are big pieces of paper that show geography on them, okay?
If you can find them.
If you can find them, know where you're going, okay? Understand where you're going. Pet care items, special items for infants or children, okay? Don't forget about your kids if you have young children. These are all things you should have in your home kit. Now, when you put all these things in your home kit, right? Like you put the, where is it? All right, you put the wrench, you put the pliers, you put all the tools in there. You're not going to want to be going into your kit when you need that wrench or you need that pliers, right?
No.
Because what's going to happen? You're going to take stuff out of your kit and you're not going to have it when you need it, right? You don't want to be going in there and getting a few dollars out of your $1,000.
That's separate.
Keep it separate. Don't touch it, all right? Because we'll all do that. Well, there'll be nothing in there by the time we need it, right? Additional items to consider: mess kit, disposable flatware, feminine hygiene, pet care, sturdy shoes, right? So you want to make sure you have sturdy shoes. I'm not sure about the Crocs. What do you think? The new ones look pretty sturdy, right? But no, you want some real Uggs. I don't know about that. Sleeping bag, fire extinguisher, things to consider. Remember, there's no right or wrong here. This is really based on what you need, and it's all at ready.gov. You can check that out on the FEMA website. When we get into the smaller kits, this could be equivalent to what we're getting here tonight, right? You got the bag, 1 to 3 days of supplies, food, water, emergency blanket, flashlight, light stick, first aid, hygiene items. Keep a sturdy pair of shoes at work. Why?
Something might happen at work.
You might be stuck at work.
I mean, listen, it wasn't that long ago for some of us when 9/11 happened and you see the people walking miles in their high heels, right? So at work, God forbid you have to evacuate, you want to have sturdy shoes, right? That's helpful. Or another pair of shoes in case something happens to the shoes you have on. So what else can you put in this kit? What are some ideas we can put in our kit?
That duct tape.
Duct tape, there it is, right there in the picture. Anything? Give me some other ideas to put in.
Permanent.
What's that? Permanent. Sure. Why not? It's your kit.
Might as well feel fine with that. I feel fine.
What else? Tourniquet. Who said tourniquet? Okay, so another program that we offer through Dutchess County is the Stop the Bleed program. Okay, I'm going to speak to the supervisor and the deputy supervisor and make that available to the town of Fishkill. Stop the Bleed is all about tourniquet use and stopping the bleed, obviously, bleeding control, first aid, the Medical Reserve Corps teaches that, and then there's an active shooter component to it that the Sheriff's Office teaches, okay? That's something that we will we'll explore in the future. Oh, I gotta get on mic, sorry. So we'll provide that information to the town. But good one, tourniquet. First aid items, obviously key. What else can you put in the kit that you think you should have? Notebook. Write things down, right? You want to be able to write things down. Somebody said cigarettes. That's up to you guys. All right?
Your phone numbers.
Yes, your phone numbers, everything we talked about. Your little black book, make sure you have it in there, okay? That's important. So you kind of get the idea where we're going with these kits, right? And you're going to get a starter kit tonight for your family to get you started. Now, as we come into the last section here, we want you to understand how to stay informed. Okay, this is important. We have so much technology out there, we can often get lost on how to get information that is accurate, right? So there's a number of ways to get information, all right? The emergency alert system I mentioned to you before, that's still active. That is active on broadcast television, broadcast radio. It's also active on Sirius XM satellite radio. It's also active on cable systems. You'll see them testing it every so often. It locks up my cable box when they do that. I don't know why. But that gives us the ability to send a message over those platforms. What's the challenge now with television and this type of notification? How many people don't have cable? How many people spend more time streaming than they do on cable? Right. So there is a process right now where Netflix, Hulu, a number of the streaming platforms are opting into this EAS technology. The problem is when you're dealing with streaming networks and satellite networks is it's not localized. You're going to get national information. You won't necessarily get local information. So that's the challenge. So how do we... There we go. So how do we talk to people locally, right? We have to make sure that we're communicating on multiple platforms. It can't just be one platform. So somebody mentioned NOAA before, NOAA, National Weather Service radio. Weather radios are good tools. You can buy a weather radio, set it for Dutchess County, and then if there's a weather alert, it's going to make a noise. Now, when I got this job in 2014, my wife and I had just gotten married. She was a police officer. I said, I'm going to get the weather radio. I'm going to put it right here in the bedroom. This way I know what's going on. And after about the third time of it going off, she was about ready to throw it through the window. So it goes off a lot because anytime there's a weather watch or a warning, it's going to make a very loud noise, right? So for folks out in the Midwest, you know, in the tornado area, yeah, it's great. It's great. It's still valuable here, but just understand it's going to go off a lot. And we don't want to be in a situation where you unplug it and don't have it anymore. New York Alert is another platform that you can opt in through New York State Department of Homeland Security and Emergency Services. New York Alert is basically a platform that you opt in for different types of notifications, right? So when you sign up for New York Alert, the problem with New York Alert is it opts you into every single notification, right? So you go on there, you sign up, and next thing you know, you're getting everything from the traffic closure on the Taconic to the sewer discharge in Beacon to the, you have to go into the system and uncheck the things you don't want to be notified about in New York Alert. And it's more of a passive notification because it's sending you a text message, right? Now, to solve these concerns, Dutchess County has recently launched our smartphone app. It's known as Ready Dutchess. Ready Dutchess is an app that's very intuitive, gives us the ability to communicate directly with you, and it also allows for other types of notifications to come through the app and notify you with a push notification. So it's known as Ready Dutchess, and we'll have more information in a second on that. We have a Facebook page, Dutchess County Emergency Management. We have a Twitter, it's at Dutchess Alerts. Those on a blue sky day like today, we're pushing out information on training like this. During an emergency, we're putting up critical information that is being passed on for folks that are impacted. But looking at the app, this is what it looks like. It allows you to get the information you need directly from Dutchess County Emergency Management. That's my office and my team. Regional weather alerts will come across. If it's an imminent emergency, you're going to receive a push notification. If it's something that is not an imminent emergency, you're going to receive just a normal text message. Now, the National Weather Service has the ability to send out wireless emergency alerts, which are the same platform that the Amber Alerts are on. When you get an Amber Alert on your phone, it makes a different type of noise. It vibrates a little differently. It gets your attention. That's on a different platform. That's called wireless emergency alerting. We have the ability to do that as well from Dutchess County. Now, the National Weather Service will only send out a wireless emergency alert for two types of weather emergencies. Tornado warnings? Nope, just tornado warnings and flash flood warnings. Those are the only type of weather emergency that they're going to activate your phone on that platform. Why is that? Because they're immediately actionable situations, imminently life-threatening, right? Tornado warning, as I said before, that's only going to activate in the geographic area that that tornado warning is in. Flash flood warning, flash flood warning is when it's not normal flooding. Flash flooding is when you have a significant amount of flooding happening very quickly where it can be a life-threatening situation. So flash flood warning and tornado warning come across that platform as a wireless emergency alert. So again, if you get those warnings on your phone, that is an actionable item. You need to pay attention to that. Through our app, we can also identify where cooling centers are, shelters are, warming centers. We provide preparedness tips, closures, power outage updates. We also have DOT traffic alerts on there. We have connection to the Dutchess County Helpline app. How many people here have heard of 988? So 988 is the new national suicide prevention number, okay? We have the helpline here in Dutchess County, which is still active, 485-9700, but our helpline operators are answering 988 for the entire region. 988 is what the bridge phones go to right now. 988, if you dial it from your phone right now, will go to the Dutchess County 988 Center, which is adjacent to the 911 Center. So from a mental health perspective and from a suicide prevention perspective, we take that very seriously here in Dutchess County. In fact, we're the only 988 center, I think we're one of two in the entire Hudson Valley, so they're routed to us where mental health professionals are standing by. So it's a live person on that number. Go ahead.
A lot of this information that you're getting out, you gotta make sure it's, I'm not saying no one's giving out incorrect information. You gotta, like even on 9/11, if you weren't there visiting some of the planes at the buildings, you really didn't know, the correct information didn't get out.
Right.
And that's case in point with down in Beacon, I was happening to go by an area and there's a tractor trailer and they hit the tracks, the train tracks and ruptured the gas tank. Well, 25 feet down the road is a water source.
Right.
I called the local police and they were unaware of the gas tank was ruptured. So I called the hazmat and they were, I called them,
Right.
So correct information never gets out. Never gets out, but.
Right. No, you're right. We have to make sure, especially in this day and age, that the correct and accurate information is out there. What do you think the biggest challenge for us as an emergency management entity is? Social media, right? So when something's happening, folks often are putting inaccurate information out on social media. People are sharing it, they're screenshotting it. We need to stay ahead of that and get accurate information out. We do work very hard to do that. So this app will allow you to receive critical local information. It's never been easier. All you have to do, and I don't know if you can do it from your perspective in the room, but if you hold your phone up on camera, it can read that code right there, and you can actually download this app. I'll put the screen back on after we're done if you want to download the app. I would recommend you do. It doesn't cost anything. It's free. We don't take any information from you. It's really just us creating an avenue for us to communicate with you. You got it from there? Okay. Yeah, so you can, if you've never done one of those codes before, you can just hold your phone up on camera mode. It'll show the link. You can click the link. Otherwise, you can go to the Google Play Store or the Apple App Store and download it. And I'll come back to this screen in a minute.
Are you going to talk about getting backup generators? I mean, that's something that's.
Yeah, we can talk about that in a second. So I'll put that, I see people with their phones up. Go ahead. Sure, go ahead.
Town of Fishkill got about $2.2 million in ARPA money, and we're going to buy 4 generators for the water districts, one in Glenham, one in Brickerhoff, and 2 in Beacon Hills. And so what that means is when the power goes out, you'll still have your water. So we just got the generators, we just got to put them in, so these generators are important. So that was a good question. Just want to let you know that Fishkill is on top of it. Okay.
And let me say, on behalf of Fishkill, there's not a lot of towns that are doing that. A lot of municipalities received money, COVID money, ARPA money, right, American Rescue Plan, and critical infrastructure protection, right, fortification, those are priorities. Town of Fishkill has taken that very seriously, making sure that they have generators in place for water and sewer districts. That's key. Other towns don't do that. I could tell you, I'm not going to name the town, but I have gotten calls in the middle of the night for power outages in certain municipalities here in Dutchess where their water system only has what's in the tank left, and they're going to be running out by the morning. And I got to pull one of those huge generators out to a municipality and connect it up in the middle of the night so that they have water for the morning. You folks have that covered.
And it's also with sewer, we have a forged main over here by the 84 Diner in the back of the woods over there. We had an underground tank, we paid to remove that, then we inspected the other tank, and it was all sludge. So if the power went out, the generator might go on for a few minutes, but it would have been out. So we got rid of that tank, and we put a tank inside the building to make sure that the fuel would still be good, so the power would run, and so when you flush the toilet, it would go away. So these are things that you need to stay on top of with generators. They're very useful.
And these are things that we don't talk about very much because, it's behind the scenes. But good work to the town of Fishkill and the administration for thinking ahead. So let me get into the final part of this because I know we've been talking for 90 minutes here and we don't want anyone to doze off. I see you back there. No, I'm just kidding.
Bill, I just have one question.
Sure, go ahead.
On the previous slides, it had push notification.
Yes.
Can you just explain what that means?
So a push notification is different than a text message. A push notification comes directly from the app, right? And you can set up preferences on your phone for push notifications to notify you differently. Generally speaking, push notifications are more important than a passive text message. So the app allows for that. We're not going to send push notifications through our app too much because we don't want people to delete the app. We know how that works. Go ahead.
Since this is being televised, I'm here representing Beacon, but not exactly representing Beacon. I want to know for my Beacon community, are we getting access to the water from Loppingers that you said that you had the generator back?
Fishkill.
and all that? Would we still have access as Beacon residents, getting our water from, I'm sorry, from Fishkill?
There's Beacon, it's very hard to explain how the town and the cities grew, and we buy water from the city, we buy it from the village, they buy it from us, so I have to know some more specifics about that, to tell you the truth.
Okay.
But I don't know,
We need to
there's
know.
like 9 water districts in the town of Fishkill, we buy from here and there, so I don't know exactly, I would have to know where you live and have to
We
look
have to
into
bring
it.
up the Beacon.
So there are redundancies in place across the county for emergency purposes. Within towns, villages, and cities, right, there are separate water systems that often serve separate communities, right? So there have to be layers of redundancy somewhere in case a system loses water. We have plans in place between the towns, the cities, the villages, and the county. If a system goes down, we know how to provide additional water to a public water system. If I got to bring trucks in to do that, we can do that. So those types of things are planned for. We can talk more about that afterwards. So as we conclude here tonight, folks, get involved, right? You all came here. This is incredible. This is the largest group that we've had at a town hall. And having so many folks here that are proactive enough to come to this type of training, we could use you, right, Susan?
Right.
Sign them up.
I can tell you, 6 years ago, I was you. Someone told me about this medical reserve thing, and my first training that I saw was the active shooter put on by the Dutchess County deputies and stop the bleed, where they then taught me how to stop a puncture wound or a bullet wound. And I saw that and I said, I'm in. And from that point on, I've seen all the trainings and I became a volunteer and I got all my other trainings. It is a fantastic organization.
And the way to reach the MRC, there's a couple ways. We want Susan to be able to get out of here and get sleep tonight, so we don't want every single person to go up to Susan at the end. A couple can, but if you send an email to mrc@dutchessny.gov, mrc@dutchessny.gov, you can talk to me afterwards also. You can get information on how to join the MRC. It's a great organization. Volunteering not only helps your community, but gets you involved in emergency planning and preparedness, right? And research has shown that if you're involved, you're going to be better prepared, right? Volunteers are always needed. Also, the local fire department, right? Let's get a plug in for the fire department. Here in the town of Fishkill, you have Rombout, you have Dutchess Junction, you have Glenham, you have Chelsea, right? In the town of Fishkill. Join the fire company, right? I've been in the fire service for 30 years. My pager went off twice while I'm standing here. Former fire chief in the Houstonville Fire Department, right? So the volunteer fire service is a great first line of defense. If you have the time and the ability to do that, they will find something useful for you to do. Trust me. That's the fire service. Get a plug in for BVAC, Beacon Volunteer Ambulance Corps, right?
63 years, Bill.
BVAC, 63 years of service. I mean, Anthony will literally take his shirt off for you and to defend BVAC. Passion from that group of people, volunteers that have served your community for so many years. So do you have to be an EMT to join, Anthony, or can you start out as a non-EMT?
No, you could, I mean, you know, we have administrative help that we need, and we also, you don't have an EMT card, but you have a clean driver's license, we need drivers. And if you need training, you know, we'll help you with some of the training. You know, the EMT course itself is a little rigorous, but if you're willing to hang in there and complete that course, that's the largest help. But you know, we'll take help in all different kinds of increments.
And they're a great resource. Definitely another opportunity here in the town of Fishkill. All right, let's finish this up. So,
Give us a second. We'll make sure we get your kits and stuff.
last two slides. We want you to strengthen your preparedness, learn basic skills, know your surroundings, get involved in your community, plan for family members who have access or functional needs, plan for your pets. By the way, on the app, you can sign up for the Access and Functional Needs Registry on the app. Know the resources outside your community as well. Remember, your family may not be together when disaster strikes. Make your plans today. Identify your points of contact. know how you will communicate, plan for your pets, make sure everyone knows the plan. Here are some resources. Dutchess County Government. Of course, our county executive is Marcus Molinaro. That's number 3. Got it. DutchessNY.gov, Cornell Cooperative Extension, New York State Division of Homeland Security is our state partner. FEMA Ready.gov. That is the resource for everything we talked about here today. Remember, you are your own first responder until assistance may arrive. Be prepared. Ladies and gentlemen, I'll hand it back to the Deputy Supervisor and the Supervisor of the town.
Thank you, Bill. I guess we all realize that Bill did one heck of a good comprehensive report and a review of where we're at and what we should be worried about. Let's give Bill a big hand. And I'd like to go and share and let you know that the town is planning a follow-up meeting so that we can get together more informally and have back and forth conversations and questions. And for those of you who have some curiosity or concerns that might have not have been covered completely, we're going to get more personal and talk about maybe those extra things that should be in that getaway bag, how to go and store the water in the house, little issues like that. Mark it down on that sheet that we passed around, and the supervisor and I, and he'll repeat it. We thank you very much for the turnout.
Okay, so we had quite a few people here today. We had about 50 bags. So people that don't live in Fishkill, you can leave first and get your bag, and the residents of Fishkill come up to us. We're going to take your name and phone number. I'm going to make sure you get a bag personally, okay? So I want to make sure everybody gets a bag today. So if you don't live in Fishkill, go get a bag. And if you live in Fishkill, please sign on the sign-up sheet, and I will get you a bag, okay? All right, thank you all for coming. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.